There's a hill in what used to be Gaul where a Roman general once stood and watched his men prepare for a battle no one remembers. The hill is still there. The general is not. His name exists in fragments, half a sentence in a text no one reads, a reference in a margin note written by a monk who didn't care. He led armies. He made decisions that killed men and saved others. He probably believed, at some point, that what he was doing mattered in a way that would outlast him. He was wrong. Not because he failed, not because he was cruel or weak or forgotten on purpose. He's gone because the world moved on and didn't need him to stay. That's not tragedy, that's structure. Most men disappear. A handful remain. The difference between them isn't always greatness. Sometimes it's just the shape of what they left behind, whether it fit into the gaps the future had room for. This isn't about that general. He's just a marker, a point on a map no one uses anymore. This is about why some men are remembered and most are not, and why that division has almost nothing to do with what they thought mattered. History doesn't choose favorites, it selects for utility. A name survives because it serves a function, teaches something, represents something, marks a shift. The rest dissolve, not punished, not judged, just unnecessary. The general lived in a world that kept moving after he stopped. He did things that felt permanent. They weren't. What remains of him now is less than a shadow. It's the idea that someone was there. That's all most men get. Forgetting is the default state. It requires no effort, no conspiracy, no failure. You simply stop being useful to the people who come after. The general commanded legions. He made decisions in moments when hesitation would have meant collapse. He understood terrain, supply lines, the rhythm of tired men who still had to fight. He won battles. Some of them mattered at the time. All of them are gone now. Not because he lost, because winning doesn't automatically generate memory. Memory is a byproduct, not a reward. It happens when what you did becomes part of a pattern someone else needs to reference. The general's victories didn't create a pattern. They were isolated events in a sequence the future didn't care to reconstruct. So they faded, and with them, he faded. There's no malice in that. The world doesn't owe you continuation. It doesn't owe you a footnote. You get remembered if what you did intersects with what comes next. If it doesn't, you're a name in a list that gets shorter every time someone rewrites it. That's not erasure, it's efficiency. History is not a museum, it's a tool, and tools don't keep what they don't use. The general probably knew people who were famous. He probably stood near men whose names are still taught. He might have spoken to them, disagreed with them, saved their lives, or taken their orders. Proximity doesn't transfer. Being in the room when something important happens doesn't make you important. It makes you present, and presence fades faster than almost anything. What's strange is how similar their days might have been. The famous general and the forgotten one both woke up in the same camps, ate the same food, dealt with the same rain and dust and silence. They both made choices, they both acted, but one of them did something that outlasted the context. The other didn't, and that difference, however small it seemed at the time, became infinite. The mechanics of disappearance are simple. You stop being referenced. Your name stops appearing in new sentences. The people who knew you die, the people who knew them die. The records that mention you are copied fewer times, stored in fewer places, read by fewer eyes. Eventually you exist only in documents no one opens, and then the documents themselves are gone, not destroyed, just irrelevant. There's no violence in it. It's atmospheric, like rust. The general's story didn't end because he died. It ended because no one needed it to continue. That's different. Death is a moment. Forgetting is a process. And the process doesn't announce itself. You don't know when you've been mentioned for the last time. You don't know when your name stops meaning anything beyond itself. It just happens, slowly, quietly, completely. Most men live entire lives without understanding this. They think legacy is about accomplishment. It's not. It's about resonance. You can accomplish extraordinary things and still disappear if those things don't echo, if they don't get picked up, rephrased, built upon, argued with. If they just sit there, completed and inert, they become invisible, not because they weren't real, because they weren't necessary. The general existed. He acted. He shaped days and outcomes and the lives of men who stood next to him, and none of it survived, not because it was small, because it was finished. The world doesn't preserve what it's done with. The things that last are rarely the things men think will last. The general probably believed his victories would matter, that the ground he took, the enemies he defeated, the strategies he employed would be studied. Maybe they were for a decade, a generation, then they became outdated, then they became trivia, then they became nothing. What survives isn't always the biggest thing, it's the thing that becomes useful again. A name lasts if it can be invoked. A strategy lasts if it teaches something portable. A decision lasts if it represents a choice someone else might face. Specific events dissolve, patterns remain. There are men whose entire legacies rest on a single sentence they said, a single letter they wrote, a single moment when they did something clarifying. The rest of their lives, years of effort, hundreds of decisions, relationships, failures, recoveries, gone, collapsed into a single data point. That's not unfair, that's selection. The future doesn't have room for everything. It takes what it can use and leaves the rest. The general left behind reports, orders, instructions on troop movements and supply distribution. Detailed, competent, thorough, all of it useless now, not because it was wrong, because the problems it solved no longer exist. You can't build a legacy on solved problems. They disappear the moment they stop being problems. What lasts is what gets repeated. Ideas that compress well, phrases that travel, actions that become reference points. The general wasn't quotable, he wasn't symbolic. He was effective in contexts that no longer exist, so he's gone. And the men who were less effective but more memorializable, they're still here, not physically, but structurally. Their names still appear, still get used, still function. That's the trick. Survival isn't about being the best, it's about being reusable. A man who does one thing that can be cited forever outlasts a man who does 1,000 things perfectly in ways that can't be transferred. The world doesn't remember you for being complete, it remembers you for being acceptable. The general wasn't acceptable. His life didn't reduce cleanly, his choices didn't illustrate anything beyond themselves. He was context dependent, and context is the first thing to go. The moment the situation changes, the moment the empire shifts, the moment new problems arrive, context-dependent men become irrelevant. They don't survive the transition. They were built for a specific moment. When that moment ends, so do they. What's brutal about this is how invisible it is while it's happening. The general didn't know he was forgettable. No one does. You live your life making decisions that feel significant. You believe you're contributing to something larger. You think the work will speak for itself, and it does for a while, then it stops. And there's no warning, no moment when someone tells you this is the last time your name will be said. It just happens, the last mention passes, and after that, silence. The men who survive this process aren't always better. They're just compatible with what comes next. Their work fits into the infrastructure of the future. It gets built upon, referenced, distorted, reused. It becomes part of the language. And once you're part of the language, you're difficult to remove. You're not a person anymore, you're a function, and functions don't die. They get replaced eventually, but that takes longer. The general never became a function, he stayed a person, and people disappear. Silence is not the opposite of legacy, it's the texture of it. Most of what the general did happened in silence. Decisions made alone, intense, at night, with no witnesses. Conversations that ended and were never recorded. Thoughts that shaped actions but were never spoken. All of that is gone, not because it didn't happen, because silence doesn't transfer. Legacy requires noise, not literal noise, but signal, something that gets transmitted. A sentence, a structure, an image, something that moves from one person to another and doesn't degrade completely in the process. The general's silence was total. He didn't write philosophy. He didn't give speeches that were recorded. He didn't produce anything that could be quoted or misquoted. He acted. An action without interpretation is invisible to the future. That's not a flaw, it's a choice. Some men don't want to be interpreted, they want to be effective. They want the work to stand alone, to speak for itself. But work doesn't speak, it just sits there, and if no one translates it into language, it becomes mute. The general's work was mute, competent, complete, silent. There's a kind of dignity in that, a refusal to perform, a commitment to the task over the image of the task. But dignity doesn't survive, it's not built to. Dignity is a private experience, it doesn't produce artifacts, and without artifacts, you're erased, not because you failed, because you didn't generate the material that memory is made from. The men who are remembered are often the men who talked, who explained, who framed their actions in language that could be repeated. They didn't just do things, they narrated themselves. They turned their lives into stories before anyone else had to, and stories, even bad ones, last longer than silent competence. The general didn't narrate himself. He didn't think that way. He saw the work as the point, the outcomes as the proof. He didn't need interpretation because the results were there, tangible, measurable, done, but results fade. Interpretation doesn't. And the men who left behind interpretation, who gave the future something to argue with, build on, refine, they're still here. The general isn't. Silence also means you don't defend yourself, you don't correct the record, you don't shape how you're remembered because you don't participate in the process of being remembered. You assume the work will be enough. It never is. The work gets absorbed into whoever comes next. They take credit, they reframe it, they call it something else. And because you're silent, there's no counter-narrative. You just disappear into their version. The general's strategies were probably used by men who came after him. Refined, adjusted, renamed. Those men are remembered. He's not, because they wrote it down, they claimed it, they made it portable. He left it in the field undefended and it was taken. That's not theft, that's how transfer works. If you don't name it, someone else will, and their name sticks. Silence is powerful in the moment. It commands respect, it creates space, but it doesn't survive the moment. The second you're gone, silence becomes absence, and absence becomes nothing. You need presence to last. You need to have said something, left something, marked something in a way that can't be easily overwritten. The general didn't, so he's gone. Not tragically, not unfairly, just completely, the way most men go. Hesitation isn't weakness, it's a form of choice. The general hesitated, not often, not dramatically, but in small moments, moments where he could have done something permanent and didn't. Moments where he could have written, spoken, claimed, defined. He chose not to, and those non-choices built the structure of his disappearance. There's a moment in almost every life where you can make yourself visible, not famous, just visible. You can say something that gets recorded. You can attach your name to something that travels. You can step forward in a way that leaves a mark. Most people don't, not because they're afraid, because it doesn't feel necessary. The work is happening. The results are there. Why does it need a signature? But the signature is what survives. The work dissolves. The signature remains. And if you hesitate to sign, if you let the moment pass because it feels performative, unnecessary, egotistical, you're choosing erasure. Not consciously, but structurally. You're building your own disappearance, piece by piece, in every moment you decide not to claim what you did. The general hesitated to claim. He didn't think of it that way. He thought of it as professionalism, as focusing on the task instead of the image. But the future doesn't see tasks, it sees images. And if you don't create one, someone else does, or no one does, and you vanish. Hesitation is also time-sensitive. There's a window when your work matters enough that people will care who did it. That window closes, and once it closes, attribution becomes impossible. The work gets absorbed into the general record. It becomes how things were done at the time. Anonymous, collective, yours becomes everyone's, which means it's no one's. The general let that window close. He didn't rush to claim. He didn't attach his name to the things that would have carried it forward. He assumed there was time. There wasn't. The window closed, and with it, his chance to be anything other than anonymous competence. What's strange is how much hesitation feels like virtue. It feels humble. It feels clean. It feels like integrity. And maybe it is, but integrity doesn't survive. It's a relational quality. It exists between you and the people who know you. Once they're gone, it's gone. There's no structure to integrity. It doesn't leave fossils. The men who didn't hesitate, who claimed, who named, who attached themselves to their work loudly and early, they're remembered. Not because they were better, because they understood that memory is active. It doesn't happen to you. You participate in it, or you don't. And if you don't, you're out. Hesitation also compounds. One small moment of not claiming becomes a pattern, a habit, a way of being. And by the time you realize it might matter, it's too late. The infrastructure of your absence is already built. Changing it would require effort you no longer have access to, so you accept it. You tell yourself it's fine, that the work is what matters, and it is. but the work doesn't remember you. The general hesitated, not once, constantly, in small ways, and those small hesitations accumulated into total erasure, not because he failed, because he didn't act when action would have meant visibility. He chose the work over the image of the work, and the work is gone, the image might have lasted. Hesitation is not neutrality, it's a vote for disappearance, and the vote always counts. There's a small group of men who don't disappear, not because they were greater, because they did something the future kept needing. They became tools, reference points, symbols. The general wasn't one of them, but they existed in his time, probably near him, probably doing similar things. The difference wasn't scale, it was shape. The men who remain are the ones who left behind something transferable, a method, a phrase, a decision that became a case study, a mistake that became a warning. They didn't just act, they acted in ways that could be generalized. Their specificity became portable. The general's specificity stayed specific. It didn't translate. What makes a man transferable is usually accidental. He doesn't set out to become a symbol. He acts in a moment, under pressure, and the action happens to clarify something. It becomes an example. It gets repeated. It gets taught. And once it's being taught, it's no longer just his. It's everyone's. But his name stays attached. That's the trade. You lose ownership, but you gain persistence. The general never made that trade. His actions stayed his. They didn't become lessons. They didn't represent anything beyond themselves. They were competent responses to specific problems. And once the problems were gone, so were the responses. There was nothing left to extract. The minority who remain also understood performance, not in a shallow way, but they understood that action without context is invisible, so they provided context. They wrote, they spoke, they framed. They made sure people understood not just what they did, but why, and the why is what survives. The what fades almost immediately. The general didn't explain. He didn't think he needed to. The results were clear, but results don't explain themselves. They sit there mute, waiting for someone to interpret them, and if you don't interpret your own results, someone else will, or no one will. The general's results went uninterpreted, so they became invisible. There's also timing. The men who remain acted at moments when the world was paying attention, not because they planned it, because they were there when a shift happened, and shifts get recorded. The general acted in continuity, in stability, in moments that didn't feel like turning points. So even though he acted well, he acted in a context that history didn't bother preserving. He was competent in forgettable times. That's not his fault, but it's his outcome. You can be extraordinary in a moment no one remembers, and that makes you forgettable too. The men who remain are often just men who happen to be present during collapse, during transformation, during crisis. Those are the moments that get written down. Everything else is background. The minority who remain also tend to be incomplete. They left something unfinished, a question, a tension, a problem they didn't solve, and unfinished things invite continuation. People come back to them, they try to complete them, to resolve them, to argue with them. The general finished his work. He left nothing open, and finished things close. They don't invite return, they're done, and done things don't last. The men who remain are not the best men. They're the most functional men. They serve a purpose in the architecture of how we talk about the past. They're examples, warnings, symbols, case studies. They're useful. The general was never useful in that way. He was effective, but effectiveness is context-dependent. Usefulness is transferable. The minority who remain are not lucky. They're structurally compatible with memory. The general wasn't, so he's gone, and they're still here, not because they were better, because they fit. The general lived, he acted, he shaped outcomes in a world that kept moving, and then he stopped. And the world didn't stop with him, it didn't pause, it didn't mark the moment, it continued, and in continuing, it forgot. That's not cruelty, it's structure. Most men disappear, a handful remain. The difference isn't greatness, it's compatibility. The general wasn't compatible with memory. He didn't leave the kind of material that survives, so he didn't survive. He's not alone, most men are with him, silent, unnamed, unnecessary to the future. That's the default, not the exception. You don't have to fail to be forgotten. You just have to stop being useful.